We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and maybe even up on YouTube. Sorry about that. Our apologies for a little technical issue there that took place. And so now what we were doing here with a bit of a delay there is we are going to pull up my notes on the book of Galatians and see what I had to say about it when I was teaching Galatians. Because I am absolutely sure that I did say something about it. Galatians chapter 3, verse 11 is what we want to look at. And I believe it is right here. Let's check this out. Okay, here we go. This is session 9 of Galatians. It covers chapter 3, verses 10 through 14. Let's go to 11. The key in this verse is the present passive of the verb justified. Thus, Paul says that no man is presently justified by the law. This is required because Paul himself spoke of righteousness of the law in Romans 10:5. In that verse, he proclaimed that which was true in Moses' day, that the man which doeth these things shall live by them, quoted in Galatians 3:12. Now in our dispensation, however, the just shall live by faith, a passage quoted from Hebrews 2:4 in the future tense. Paul will say in 3:24 that the law served its purposes and is now obsolete because faith has come. From Romans 10:5, note the verb is speaking of the righteousness of the law. It is assumed that by the translators, not in the text itself, italicized in Young's. How does one deal with this without becoming a dispensationalist? Clearly, there was a time when man doeth the things of the law and shall live by them. Clearly, that time is not the current time. Okay, I dealt with the dispensational issue. I did not deal with the mystery issue in that, and so shame on me for not doing that in that Galatians study. That's why I have to keep doing these books over and over and over again. But I believe that what we've got here is that indeed, in the millennium, the just shall live by faith. And that's what Habakkuk is talking about. But just as Paul says, I was born as one out of due time, premature, there are some things of the millennium that are brought forward into today, and we are experiencing them today. They were not prophesied for that at all, and yet we are experiencing them. This is also where a lot of people misunderstand and say there's an inaugurated eschatology. Already not yet. There's not an inaugurated eschatology. There's just a few foretastes that have been brought that are given now in the dispensation of the age of grace that will go away. If they're going away, that's not an inauguration of the eschaton. That's it's not saying, oh, some of these things have already started. No, it's things that are similar and not the same. Difficult passage, but I hope that helped you out. Marcus then says, what are some Bible teachers that majorly influenced you as you became dispensational as you are now? And he says, I'm quite fond of Clarence Larkin and Charles Baker. I love your ministry, Dr. White. You're a true Bible teacher in every sense of the title. Well, how nice, Marcus. You get the Nice Man Award for today. Okay, so now that we look at this, who are some of my most influential dispensational teachers? I suppose I would have to say probably as I was, I don't want to sound arrogant on this. My most influential teacher was Luke because I began to study, I became a dispensationalist just by reading the Bible. I've given this testimony a little bit before, never in a really long matter, but as I did that, I became a dispensationalist, and honestly, and I kid you not, and pardon me for being so dumb, but I didn't even know there were things as dispensationalists. I didn't know the word. I mean, I only had a doctorate from a big box seminary, so you got to forgive me. I didn't have the kind of education that would have taught these things. So I I learned dispensationalism by reading Luke mainly because it was the book of Acts. And I struggled with some things like the tithe and some of the things of the law that I was bringing in and saying, well, wait a minute, if we're free from the law. So I was doing that kind of Acts Romans, I guess you would say, that I became a dispensationalist. And then I began to read some of the old works like Arno Gabalin and Dwight Pentecost and some of that era of dispensationalism out of Dallas Theological Seminary. And that helped me greatly. But then I kept reading Acts. And reading Acts, I kept saying, oh, you know, there really is, Acts 2 isn't the spot. Because they still do the same things in Acts 2 and 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I kept pushing it off and realizing from Ephesians chapter 3, that was a huge chapter in my becoming the kind of dispensationalist I am today, because Ephesians chapter 3, Paul is so clear, I got this, nobody else got this, you can't find it anywhere else. So I began to say there has to be a Pauline distinction. Now, somewhere along there, and I don't know if I just stumbled across it, I think I did. I did stumble across C.R. Stam's Acts Dispensationally Considered. And I think by that time I had figured it out, but again, I didn't know these people were out there. This is the problem with denominationalism, I would say, is you live in this denominational bubble. And I was in that denominational bubble, and nobody ever talked about C.R. Stam or J.C. O'Hare or Clarence. Clarence Larkin got in there some. Charles Baker. You know, these guys were just like, I don't know, I guess there's some pagans out there because they're not Southern Baptists. I lived in this stupid Southern Baptist bubble. I'm so glad I'm out of it. But anyway, C.R. Stam helped me, and as I read his commentary, then I read Acts Dispensationally Considered, and after that I read it's on Paul. I can't remember even the name of it, but he's got a book out there about Paul and Paul being a different kind of disciple. And so I began to recognize, hey, Paul is not one of the 12. It's not 13. Paul comes along very differently. And again, I had realized this from Acts and from Romans and from Ephesians and from Colossians that we had to go. But I would say probably more than any, C.R. Stam did help me to systematize it better and to put it into my mind and to realize and recognize there's others out there. Now, what I do when I read a book like this is I find people that, for example, that C.R. Stam mentions. And then I'm like, oh, I want to go read his stuff and his stuff and his stuff. Now, Stam doesn't use a lot of reference points like that. He's kind of like me, he's a Bible teacher, was a Bible teacher. And somewhere along the way, I ran into Les Feldick, who just is this week or last week went to be with the Lord, and I've found his stuff online, and I would consult that every now and then. It's been a long time since I've consulted that stuff, or honestly, anybody's stuff. I mostly do just textual studies rather than reading many commentaries. About the only time I read a commentary today is if I just want to see what kind of dumb things somebody said, then I'll go to a commentary. But yeah, I would say Stam and probably Feldick, Stam and Les Feldick. Now then I got into I don't know, Sir Robert Anderson, who helped me greatly, Charles Baker, who I think has done a wonderful job on some things. The only thing I don't like about Charles Baker's systematic theology is he's got too much Calvinism in there for me. I think that was left over from his Presbyterian DTS days. I wish he'd get rid of that. I would be pushing Charles Baker's systematic theology big time if it wasn't for the Calvinism in there, in the soteriology section. I don't know why he did that. I would like to say, hey, Charles Baker, what's up there? You know, why did you do this? And then along the way, I began to meet some people, actually like real people, and began to talk to them and visit them, alive people, David Reed and Brian Ross and some of these others, and use them as sounding boards from time to time. Thank you. Marcus, I appreciate it. Oh, let's go up to Austin, Minnesota. Bob, good to see you there. It's been a while since we've had a question from you. I'm glad you're here with us today. Who was the lake of fire created for? And where do we find reference to that? Bob goes on to say, I know the Antichrist and false prophet are the first residents of such, but it seems to me that somewhere it is said to have been created for Satan. But I don't know where the reference is. Let's see if we can find that here. I think it's in Revelation 21. I'm with you. We're going to do some research here. And let's see if we can bring this up and find it. Where are we going to go? Maybe Matthew 25:41. Let's check this out. See if this helps us. The Revelation 20 passage, I said 21 a moment ago, it'd be 20, may have been leading our minds astray. Jesus, Matthew 25:41, then he shall say unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Let's go ahead and look up cross references to this, Matthew 25:41, and see if we've got anything on the prepared for. No. I think that's going to be it, yeah. So Matthew chapter 25, verse 41 talks about the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Assuming, and I think it's a decently safe assumption, assuming that we can take the everlasting fire and the lake of fire to be the same thing, which seems like it would be a hard thing to argue that it's not the same thing. So with that assumption, as we question the assumptions, I think we can come along and say that Matthew chapter 25, verse 41 gives us the word that this everlasting fire or lake of fire was prepared for the devil and his angels. Now, that brings a question of when was it prepared? And I think for that, you would have to answer the question, well, you could go two ways on it. I would say probably prepared when Satan rebelled and his punishment was set right there. And the lake of fire was prepared for him and created for him. It was ready to go. You know, Chuck is on today, and a couple of days ago, Chuck asked me about The Legend of Wyatt Earp, the 1956 television series, and asked if I had watched it, and I said, no, I haven't watched The Legend of Wyatt Earp. And many of you know that I am a fan of old TV westerns. The movies are good too, but I never take, an hour and a half or 2 hours to watch a movie. So I like just the daily series, TV series. But I like half-hour series. And a lot of them were hour-long series. And so Chuck set me on to The Legend of Wyatt Earp. And I've only watched 3 episodes so far, but I've enjoyed the 3 episodes of The Legend of Wyatt Earp. Are any of you Legend of Wyatt Earp fans? How does this come into eternal punishment and the devil prepared? Who is the bad guy that was shooting up Kansas? Forgot his name now. Wyatt was after him. Ben somebody? Thompson? Ben Thompson, maybe? Anyway, he knew he was out there in the sticks, and he was sending a couple of Indians out there to sneak up, not let them know that they were there, but they were hanging nooses. And so, you know, it was you know, early on, what do you call it? Psycho warfare. There's a name for that. Because, you know, they would go in this hiding place and look, you know, they would wake up and there's a noose right there. Now, I bring that. Seems to me like the lake of fire is created as that. It's always out there. And devil, you can't get away from it. And it was created when the devil rebelled. Now, there's some speculation there on that, but that would be my assumption. This also, you know, going on this is one of the reasons why I am still not sold on the gap theory. I kind of want to be sold on the gap theory, but I'm not sold on the gap theory because that would mean you would have to have the lake of fire from the beginning when God is looking and saying, hey, this is all very good. And you know, maybe there's a sense in which you can spin that to say, okay, it's good because that which is evil is going to be destroyed. But it seems like, you know, right here and now, it is all very good. And that's, you know, so I would put the lake of fire as created later. But according to Matthew chapter 25:41, definitely prepared for Satan and his angels, his messengers. Oh, Randy watched it every time it came on when I was a child. You have to watch Tombstone to see the finish, though. Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, now I see some talk about the Rifleman. That's still my favorite. I've done a good bit of the Laramie series, a fair bit of the Cheyenne series. I kind of like the Cheyenne series, but it's hard to find. And so, yeah, if they would make more of the Rifleman series, I would go with that. But so far, The Legend of Wyatt Earp, not bad. Okay, where are we here this morning? Let me back up. Thanks for the question. Nancy, were all those killed on the flood Nephilim, or were there others? An addendum to that question, she says, I guess I should ask, since Noah was the only one righteous in his generation, does that mean everyone killed in the flood were Nephilim? I think that little passage of he's the only one, that is, of course, Galatians chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, down in a few verses. There's giants in verse 4. God saw the wickedness of man was great. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That doesn't say so, but it sounds like everybody. Lord repented that he had made man, grieved in his heart. I will destroy man whom I have created. And Noah found grace. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. The earth was corrupt. Noah was perfect. I think if you did some word study on this, you would find that perfect is the opposite of corrupt, and they're both DNA words. God looked up on the earth. It was corrupt. All flesh had corrupted his way. If we're going to take it literally, I guess we should. Yeah, all flesh. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. And then you get the the instruction that goes there. So, were all those killed in the flood the Nephilim? That basically means everybody except Noah and his family. And I think you would have a hard time building any other case using the text. Now, if you use maybe like a Lifeway Sunday School lesson or something like that, you could build the case that Noah was out there preaching the gospel and these other people just were stubborn and they decided not to. But Noah was, a good Southern Baptist. You'd probably get that out of the Lifeway Sunday School lesson. But if you're just going from the Bible, I think you get there was a wholesale corruption of the human race except for Noah and his sons and his wife. And obviously if Noah and Mrs. Noah were not corrupt, then their sons were not corrupt in their DNA either. We've talked in the past about Ham's wife, and their offspring Canaan, or Ham's wife's offspring Canaan anyway, whether or not there's some Nephilim there, because the Nephilim certainly come aboard later. The Jewish position is not that it comes through Ham, but rather the Jewish position is some of them survived. I think that's harder to build the case for, but nonetheless, they recognize, hey, there's Nephilim before the flood, there's Nephilim after the flood, and you've got to figure this out. So I think were all those killed in the flood Nephilim, or were there others? No, I would say they were all Nephilim, or tainted by Nephilim, perhaps we should say, and bring it out and carry it that way. Thanks, Nancy, up in soon-to-be 86 degrees, Pueblo West, Colorado. I see that. Oh, James, I'm not sure where you're from, but Michael Pearl has a good book on the Gap Fact. I'm gonna check that out and see, because again, I think there's some decent textual evidence for the Gap. I just can't quite get there. Lorraine, good to see you. The question, we are, see if I can say this. I'll have to back up and go at it. Trichotomous, body, soul, and spirit, all exist here in this vessel. If we are seated at the right hand of God, is there a fourth part? Then she says, I know there's not. So what? Oops, I lost the last half of that question. Milford, Ohio. James, thank you. I lost the last half of Lorraine's question. I'm going to back up here and see if I can find that. But I think we can go with it here. Joel, I like that comment. That commentary. The Bible sheds a lot of light on commentaries. It does indeed, doesn't it? Indeed it does. And I'll keep looking as I look for Lorraine's. Maybe I'm getting close. I see Rhonda from Santa Maria, California. That's what happens. There, I found that's what happens when I read the comments. I found the rest of the question. Okay, so here we are, body, soul, spirit, and all of that's right here. As Lorraine says, all that exists here in this vessel. If we are seated at the right hand of God, is there a fourth part? And she says, I know there's not, so what are we sitting with? So that particular passage, let's pull that up and take a look here. Pardon the music of the other software. Ephesians 2:6, I think, is where we want to go. And Okay. He hath raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Now, I am going to hesitate on this. Let me tell you what I mean. Made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. I think the us right here, it is inserted by the translators, but certainly is the only pronoun you could go with. I don't think that's me and you. This actually doesn't mitigate the question. The question is still there, but I don't think this is Lorraine and Randy, that he made Lorraine and Randy sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Now, I know that even all my right dividing friends say, no, this is Lorraine and Randy right here. But I put Lorraine and Randy not in the us category in Ephesians, which you see down here again in verse 7, his kindness towards us through Jesus Christ, but I put Lorraine and Randy in the ye category, for by grace ye are saved through faith and not that of yourselves. And I am persnickety when it comes to pronouns, and I don't think you can just willy-nilly go from us to ye. So rather than doing it willy-nilly, I start from the beginning of Ephesians and separate out the first person plural, us and we, from the second person plural, you and ye. And I end up, and our study on Ephesians will help explain all this, but I end up saying Lorraine and Randy are among ye Ephesians, but not among us who sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Now, I think us happens to be the remnant of Israel, the saved of Israel, the redeemed of Israel, perhaps the saints of Israel. And so Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6 would refer to them. But how is Israel seated together in the heavenlies with Christ Jesus? I know that, and I agree that the blessings of Israel are earthly and physical. And I agree that you and I have heavenly blessings. I just wouldn't use this passage to build that case, because I think the pronoun, you just have to end up getting sloppy with the pronouns rather than persnickety with the pronouns when you get there. So let's do here for the third time today. Let's look at the references here to Ephesians chapter 2, and we're going to go verse 6 here. Back up a little bit to Ephesians 2:6. And is there another reference that would put us, I'm just going by location here. Here's one in Romans. We are buried with him by baptism. Even so, we should walk in newness of life. Again, I'm kind of persnickety with the we's in Romans. But that gets into a different issue, not into being seated in the heavenlies. Who has blessed us with spiritual blessings in the heavenlies. Ephesians 1:3. I might put these together, that the nation of Israel is seated with him in the heavenlies only in a spiritual sense, which you might be able to say only in a metaphorical sense. Just like here, they're blessed with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. 1:19, let's see. Yeah, nothing. I was looking to see, and I don't see anything here that puts Lorraine and Randy as seated with him in heavenly places. But does that solve the problem? Because somebody is seated with him in heavenly places. So, are they seated in body or in soul or in spirit? When the Spirit is here, here's the best I can do on this, Lorraine, and it might not be an A+ answer. But the best I can do on this is to say the us here is probably speaking more nationally. And the nation does not necessarily have its spirit with them like I do and you do. So the national spirit, the true Israel, if you will, is for now seated with him on heavenly places. Waited until he breathes that spirit back into them in the last days. And the true Israel comes about. Is probably as close as we can get there. Now, if you want to argue, let's just for the sake of a little fun here, let's go ahead and argue that no, it is Randy and Lorraine who are seated with him in heavenly places. But I think very much we would have to say, as Lorraine says, we got our whole body right here. Our spirit is not disembodied. Our soul is not disembodied, and our body is certainly not disembodied. We're right here. Body, soul, and spirit, the whole me, right here. So how could I be seated with him? Again, I think you end up almost having to take it in a metaphorical sense. So I think it actually works best grammatically, and to take it literally is to say it's the true Israel that's seated with him in heavenly places, and God will breathe his spirit back into the physical Israel when they are born again. And I think you could build a pretty strong theological case and biblical textual case for that would match, again, then my assumption that us, seated together in the heavenlies, is the nation of Israel, and it's done, shall we say, collectively in that. Thank you. A related question that Stephen in Winston-Salem adds to this: what if body and soul are both physical? The body being the physical form, the soul the physical functioning of the body. That is the intellect and the will and the emotions. Well, I think that there's a decent case to be made for that also. And the reason is because what is my soul without my body? And yet to be absent from the body, there's got to be an ability to separate. So I don't know that I would put the soul completely on, that is the body carrying out its functions, because in heaven, after my death, if it comes before the rapture, there'll be a separation, the body here, the soul there, and that would therefore have to be non-spiritual, non-physical, have to be spiritual. But this kind of goes both ways right now. I think it becomes a theological hair that is almost impossible to divide, because we don't know what to do with it, because our body without our soul and spirit it's not us. And our soul and spirit without our body, that's not us. It's the whole package to be us. And we have to take that package together is the only thing that we know what to do with that. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Was actually to what I was reading about there. The video started mid-question. You're right. Those of you on YouTube, we got we had a glitch, and YouTube didn't come out at the beginning of the broadcast today, so you can check those out on Worshipify. I happened to see Rhonda's question here, And I almost missed it because didn't have the criteria to get over into my question hopper. The way to do that is use the word question if you're watching on YouTube. But anyway, from Santa Maria, California. If Satan is the ruler of this earth, is God in control of all? When we suffer or experience such horrible things, there will still be death during the millennium. Yeah, so Satan is the prince of the power of this age, the god of this world. Is God in control of all? Well, I think ultimately we have to say yes, but I think unlike the Calvinists who say God being in control of all, their small little brains say if God is in control of all, then absolutely every detail of any activity must be ordained and God must be pulling the strings, otherwise he's not in control. I think that is a very weak view of control and of sovereignty. And I'll just go out and say the Calvinists have a little teeny tiny God that they have boiled down in their own imagination rather than allowing God to have a sovereignty. I think that God gives a free will. Giving a free will means that even if there's no Satan and I just choose to play checkers one day, well, it's not God that's making me play checkers. It's my free will. And God has, in his sovereignty, said, you can go and you can do that. And so I think, when we suffer or experience horrible things, some of that is free will, and maybe more than we'd like to admit. There's a lot of suffering that we do bring upon ourselves, me and you, and we can't blame God for that. Then there's a lot of suffering that you and I didn't necessarily bring upon ourselves, but our society brought upon us by their free will. We just have to live with it. And then there is some suffering that comes because of the curse that was brought upon the world because of Adam's free will. And that would be like sickness and death and dying. And so these things just kind of come our way. And we deal with those and we struggle with those. And so God is allowing both. Well, I would say in our age, actually, God is allowing Rhonda and Randy to make decisions for this world. And if we collectively, if I individually make good choices, it's going to help my life and my family, no doubt about it. And if we collectively make good choices, it's going to help our neighbors, our children, our grandchildren. We could, there's this, it got messed up because people took it into building the kingdom and things like that. But we could collectively as a society quit making dumb choices and start making good choices, and it would improve our society. We'd have better economy, we'd have better freedoms, we'd have safer streets, less crime, all that kind of stuff. If we'd quit making dumb choices, and the dumb choices are voting Democrat. If we'd quit doing that, things would get better. It wouldn't totally get better because there's so many dumb Republicans. We would have to figure out, how to take care of that too. But if we'd quit doing dumb things, we'd quit having dumb stuff. Is God not sovereign anymore? Yeah, he's sovereign. Absolutely. He lets us come along and decide and make it work in such a matter. Thank you. Santa Maria, California. Gerard in the Netherlands. Saturn. A planet. Orange with purple and a ring. Sturgeon is the Satan and star of Ramphon. Molech is an adversary, fake god. mentions Amos 5:26 and Acts 7:23. So is it a wonder why all governments are going rogue on steroids? Okay, a little bit of background that we may not all be familiar with here, but let's look at Amos chapter 5, verse 26. Okay, here's some of the names. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Molech and Chiun. Chiun is probably how you pronounce it. Your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. And Acts 7:43. Hey, before I get to Acts 7:43, let me just point out here, this goes along with what we were saying here. Oops, I lost that. Which you made for yourselves is what I was going to point at here. And now I've got to Acts 7:43. Ye took, you did it, ye took the tabernacle of Molech and the star of your God, Ramphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Yeah, when we make bad choices, whether it's Moloch and Chiun and Ramphan or Biden, whatever it is, when we make dumb choices, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps whatever he sows. So is it a wonder why all the governments are going rogue on steroids? I'd say governments are going rogue on steroids, and they are, because we let them. That's why. We authorize them to do it. Did you see, I saw this just yesterday, and I don't know that I still have it up, but let me, I may be able to find the article here. I don't see it there. There was an article just yesterday about the FBI infiltrating the Catholic Church, wanting to use Catholic priests to tattletale on their parishioners. But it's not new. Remember J. Edgar Hoover? But the problem is we always just let it. Oh, yeah, Hoover, he's spying on us. They're coming into the churches, the government. Here in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, yeah, when we, the people, allow government idiots to have control over every aspect of our lives, and we're not going to lift a finger about it, we're not going to do anything about it, I don't think we have anyone to blame but ourselves. I can't even blame Molech. I would like to blame Molech. If it wasn't for that old Satan Molech, I think I've mentioned several times recently, I've been listening to the audiobook on Harry S. Truman. And Truman, it's a weird period back in the 40s, because by our standards today, they would all be considered liberals, the Republicans and the Democrats. Remember Dewey was the Republican. Dewey was probably more liberal than Truman. And Truman had a lot of liberal social policies, and yet he was conservative. But anyway, Truman I think it was 46. Maybe it was 46. Yeah, 46. He was routed in the midterm elections, and the Republicans took over. Robert A. Taft, who was another liberal. But Truman, you remember he almost didn't win the 48 election. Dewey defeats Truman. Remember all that? He went on this whistle-stop tour, and basically his whole speech was, let me tell you why it's such a mess. It's such a mess because you stayed home in 1946. You got what you deserved. I mean, he raked his audience over the coals. You got what you deserve. You stayed home and you didn't elect good people, and now look what you got. You got this do-nothing Congress. Maybe with a little bit of work, I could even look like Harry Truman. I don't know. We get what we deserve. And that's all unfortunate. I guess. I mean, what's the option? I would rather get what I deserve than have a puppet, than be a puppet of tiny little God who gets his feelings hurt all the time and just has to ordain every little word I say and everything I do. I don't want that. So, okay. Good to see you today. Again, sorry we had some technical issues today. Tomorrow we'll be back with Ask the Theologian. We'll be back also then on tomorrow night with the study of Jeroboam. Thursday with Ask the Theologian. Thursday night with Romans. Friday with Ask the Theologian. Be here all week long. I should let you know that after the You Learn It series begins on Sunday, April the 16th, on Monday I'm leaving town. We will not be broadcasting next week. I got to go see my grandkids, and so I'll be out for a week next week as Shelley and I make our way down to Florida. So prepare mentally and spiritually in advance on what you're going to do next week as I am out. Thanks for being here very much, and for your patience. Oops, there we go. Your patience with the technical difficulties we had early on. And the hopper's open. Put your questions in. AskTheTheologian.com. You can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We'll be ready to take them